You are watching Reviews by Shay, and this week I will be reviewing the 1941 film Citizen Kane. So Citizen Kane is this boy who is given away when he's a child from his mother and ends up becoming rich. He becomes rich when he's an adult, and he starts running a newspaper, and then he, wants to go into politics, and he just increasingly grows more obsessive about having control. Basically, he wants to have control over the people. He wants to have control over his wives. He was married twice in the movie. He wants to have control over basically everything. And this movie was really innovative for its time because it starts off with the death of, Charles Kane, and then it kind of goes backwards, and the story is told through like a series of flashbacks, and all the characters are interconnected with each other, and they tell the story of how they remember him, which points out the fact that this reporter who is trying to uncover the hidden meaning of Kane's last words, which was simply Rosebud. He goes out to talk to all the people that were close to him, but everyone's telling them how they remember it through their own memories, and it doesn't say much as if if Kane had been the one to tell the story himself, would it be different from their account? So it really plays on the fact, can you really trust people's memories? This film was amazing in so many ways. It had such great use of lighting and shadows, and really set the precedent for the film noir genre as far as how to use the lighting and shadows to create that dynamic effect. Another thing that it used, which we read about in the book, was depth of field, but you don't really understand it until you see it. How the one scene of his second wife walking away, you can see him staying at the door, but you can see her walking, and it's just a great use of depth of field. But I think it also symbolizes the distance that had grown between them, and that was another thing. There was a lot of symbolism in this movie, which I think for the time was advanced. There was the symbolism of he bought statues because he wanted control, and statues were basically the only people he could control. He tried controlling his staff and his wives, and it just didn't work out, so he bought these statues so that he could control them. And of course, at the end of the movie, we get to see what Rosebud means. What it was his sled, but I think even that was symbolizing something that Kane always wanted, which was a family. And he had it for a little bit when he was growing up, and then his parents basically sold him off, and he never really got a family. The use of the flashbacks, I thought that was very cool, how they told the story and how they used the transitions to do the flashbacks. One of the transitions I thought was the most amazing is when he's looking at the picture of all the best reporters, and then he starts walking, and then next thing you know, they're back at his newspaper, and they're taking the picture of all those people there. And so innovative. They use dissolve transfers, they use wipes, it was amazing. And the layers upon layers of scenes when his second wife is singing, I think I can see why it's named the greatest film of all time, because there's so many things in this movie that I can see change the way that cinema was. The cinematography, I think, is the biggest thing. The way the cameras were used, the angles were used. Sometimes it was larger than life, sometimes it was smaller than life, but just everything put together just made this movie fantastic, and just way ahead of its time. And as far as it being relevant today, like, it talks about, corrupt politics and just so many things that, like, still relevant today, that we still see in the news today. It might not be through a newspaper, but it's still the same kind of headlines and still the same kind of scandals and still the same kind of control that people of power want to have. They want to have control over how their image is in public. Another thing was the mix of genres here. Back then, studios were known for their certain type of genre, but this had drama, it had mystery, it had a little bit of romance, a little bit of comedy. It was a little bit of everything and like mixed in, and that was also different. Like, it wasn't just one genre, there was a little bit of everything. It's just amazing how everything came together. The acting and the dialogue and the lighting and the camera angles, they all worked to make this masterpiece.